guys, I'm Alex Leba, and welcome to my complete Blu-ray collection video. It's been exactly 1 year to the date since I've done one of these videos, and I'm actually wearing the same exact shirt that I wore in the other Blu-ray collection video. Here's how this is gonna work. I'm gonna go through each and every one of these movies. I'm going to say something about most of them. I'm not going to talk about all of them. This is going to be a really long video, but here's what I'm going to do. I know a lot of you don't like long videos, and I completely understand that. I'm going to put timestamps in the description of this video to where you can just click on it and you can watch any part of my Blu-ray collection you want. If you just want to see my Steelbook collection, or if you just want to see my box sets or dramas or my horror collection or whatever, my Digibooks, comedies, whatever. All those timestamps are going to be down below in the description, just in case you don't want to watch the whole video, which, like I said, completely understand. Yeah, without further ado, let's just get going. Let's start with the dramas. First movie I have, Stand By Me. One of my favorite movies of all time, one of the best coming-of-age films ever. Next up, Castaway, one of my top 20 movies ever. Incredible film, very depressing though, and I really want the slipcover to this. Cloud Atlas, a very underrated film in my opinion, very overlooked. It's basically about like all these different timelines that interconnect throughout centuries of time. It's just a very interesting, well-done film. It's literally every single genre of film. Like it's a drama, it's a comedy, it's a love story, it's a science fiction film, it's a period piece. The next film up is The Place Beyond the Pines, my favorite film of 2012. This film is a complete masterpiece. Everything about this movie is just perfect. The acting, the cinematography, the directing. Boyhood, directed by Richard Linklater, my favorite director of all time. It's outstanding, one of the best movies I've ever seen. Birdman, another 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Probably one of the best movies of the past 10 years. Another great movie, Whiplash, written and directed by Damien Chazelle, who is one of my favorite screenwriters now. It truly is outstanding. Some of the best acting. It's hilarious, it's tension-filled. It's incredible. Before Midnight, the third film in a trilogy directed by Richard Linklater. The first one was Before Sunrise, the second was Before Sunset. This trilogy is probably the best romance films of all time. Steve Jobs, it really was underappreciated like at the Oscars. I think this should have got nominated for like directing, or especially the editing. The editing in this film is immaculate. Jobs, you know, a lot of people hate this movie. I actually don't think that it's a bad movie. I just think it has a lot of problems, and there are also, in my opinion, a lot of good things about it. I like Ashton Kutcher's performance as Steve Jobs. Age of Adeline, a very underrated film that came out in 2015. The Grand Budapest Hotel. Walk, Nebraska, an outstandingly well-written film. Great movie. Very underrated movie in my opinion, and that is Disconnect. A great movie. It's pretty much a modern remake of the movie Crash. Silver Linings Playbook. Drive. I don't like it as much as some people do, like Chris Stuckman, but I think it's a very well-shot movie. This actually is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. The Outsiders, Leaving Las Vegas, Primal Fear, incredible court drama, incredible acting, Edward Norton's first film, and it has one of the best twists, maybe in movie history. Schindler's List, Goodfellas, my favorite Scorsese movie I've seen. I got the 20th anniversary edition right here. Valkyrie, a very underrated Tom Cruise film. The Blind Side, outstanding film. 8 Mile. The Tree of Life. Visually, this movie is like a 5 out of 5. I don't think I could watch it again, at least for maybe 30 years. And also Terrence Malick, the dude who directed this, he makes a movie like once every 36 years. Karate Kid, Bad Lieutenant, Blue Jasmine, The Master, The Hurt Locker, Jarhead, Troy, American History X, This Is It, Magic Mike, Secret Window, Mud, Warrior, Wrestler, Natural Born Killers, Public Enemies, a very underrated movie with good performances. Rudy, this movie, it was actually filmed about 30 minutes away from where I live. No Country for Old Men, American Gangster, and The Machinist, A Few Good Men, Milk, The Karate Kid remake, surprisingly, in my opinion, a pretty good movie. The Pursuit of Happiness, a pretty good movie. I watch it like once every 4 years. Training Day, The French Connection, Good Will Hunting, Crash, really good movie. This is probably the most hated Best Picture winner of all time, but I always really liked it. King of Comedy, True Romance, The Aviator, and Gangs of New York. The Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Gone Girl. Gone Girl I thought was really good twist, went in directions that I didn't expect. The Descendants, The Black Stallion, Moneyball, Wall Street, Slumdog Millionaire, 127 Hours, another Danny Boyle movie. This is another film that's outstanding. The editing is fantastic. Probably James Franco's best performance. Unforgiven, The Assassination of Jesse James, Platoon, Black Swan, a pretty messed up movie, but very well directed, and a very nice slipcover. Savages, another Oliver Stone movie. I actually haven't seen this one yet either. And the sequel to Wall Street. Sling Blade, Lincoln Lawyer. Matthew McConaughey went from the Lincoln Lawyer to doing Lincoln commercials. Life of Pi, Trouble with the Curve, Top Gun, Rounders, Roadhouse. My mom actually wanted to name me after Patrick Swayze's character in this movie. I was so glad she didn't. She was going to name me Dalton after this character. Man, if she would have done that, first of all, Dalton, I hate that name because I actually have a friend named Dalton, and if you watch my videos, you know that he's an idiot. And also, this is not a good movie, and so I wouldn't want this movie, like, I wouldn't want my life to be revolved around this movie. Like, that would just be terrible, and so thank you, Mom, for not naming me after Dalton. Ray, Revolutionary Road, directed by Sam Mendes. I heard this is pretty much the story of Titanic if Jack had lived. King Kong, most definitely my favorite remake of all time. In my opinion, an incredible movie. A lot of people say that the first act of this film, they're like, oh, I hate this movie up until they get to the island, then it's pretty good. But I'm like, well, you need all that time before they get to the island in order to, care about these characters. Because if we just started when they're at the island, people say, oh, it should have started when they were at the island. Then, we wouldn't care about the characters. And then, the movie wouldn't be good because we don't care about the characters. I have all the Lord of the Rings films. I don't have the extended edition. Up The Hobbit, and The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Next, I'm going to go through my kids' movies and animated films. Basically, my family film section. Hulk vs. Hulk, The Invincible Iron Man, and The Ultimate Avengers. Journey to the Center of the Earth. This is the movie that really brought back 3D. You see, because 3D comes back every 20 years. It was in the 50s, and it went away. Then it came back in the 80s. And then it kind of went away in the 90s, and then it came back in the early 2000s with, kids' films. Then it completely came back in 2008. Now it's stuck with us forever, and there's nothing we can do about it. Big, Seth Talks Films' favorite movie of all time. And I have the 25th anniversary edition with the singing slipcover. Meet Dave, a terrible movie, but this movie makes me laugh. It's not a good movie, though. Jumanji, rest in peace, Robin Williams. Great childhood movie. Princess Bride, The Sandlot, Where the Wild Things Are. This film is directed by Spike Jonze. I want to see everything that guy does after Her and Being John Malkovich and Adaptation. I really wish that dude would direct more movies. Alvin and the Chipmunks, Chipwreck, The Squeakquel. The first Alvin and the Chipmunks, I actually really like this movie. I think it's a very entertaining kids movie, and I really, really like it. I'd rate it like a B+. Lego Movie, Madagascar, one of my favorite animated movies ever. I love the first one, 2 was okay, and 3 I didn't like it hardly at all. I actually bought it on Black Friday, and then I just returned it not even a week later after watching it. But the first Madagascar, though, I really like this movie. Space Jam, one of my favorite childhood movies of all time. I grew up with it. The SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. This film brought me back to my childhood. But I really like this, and I would recommend it if you're a fan of SpongeBob. Despicable Me, National Treasure, one of my favorite adventure movies of all time. Howl's Moving Castle, My Neighbor Totoro, 2 Studio Ghibli films. Inside Out, an outstanding film, one of the best movies of 2015. A really smart kids movie that was very well written. Incredible animation, as always, with Pixar. Finding Nemo. Probably either my second or third favorite Pixar movie. I grew up with this movie. I'm a huge fan of this film. Toy Story 2. I have the first one, and I really want to get 3. Toy Story, my favorite kids movie ever made. I don't have to say much about it. It's Toy Story. It's a great film. It revolutionized computer effects and really cinema in general. Okay, next we're going to move on to my comedies. First up in the comedies, Neighbors. Next up, Dumb and Dumber and The Mask. I grew up with these films. Liar Liar, one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Jim Carrey's funniest performance by far. I love this movie. I grew up with it, one of my favorite childhood movies. Funny People, I actually haven't watched this yet. Click, not really that good of a movie, but I still kind of like it though. 50 First Dates, in my opinion, a really good Adam Sandler movie. One of my favorites from him by far. Anger Management, a decent Adam Sandler movie, I thought. Big Daddy, one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies. I really like this movie. 50-50, a good cancer comedy. 500 Days of Summer, and another Joseph Gordon-Levitt film. And Don John, his Joseph Gordon-Levitt's directorial debut. I thought this was a really enjoyable movie. The editing of this movie, I thought was really, really good. Bad Words, Jason Bateman's directorial debut. It's decent. This is 40, the spin-off to Knocked Up. I haven't seen it. I probably never will. Top 5, written and directed by Chris Rock. I thought this was a really good movie, and it had a lot to say about like Hollywood and actors and comedians and stuff like that. A Million Ways to Die in the West. Next we have Ted, one of my favorite comedies of recent years. Really funny movie. I'm a huge fan of Seth MacFarlane. Friday. Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Horrible Bosses. The World's End, a pretty big surprise for me. I didn't think I was going to like it that much, but I ended up really, really enjoying it. I really like the sci-fi aspect to it. We're the Millers, in my opinion, kind of an underrated comedy. I actually liked this more than most people did. I thought it was really funny. Bad Teacher. Zombieland. Now, they need to do a sequel to this. I really wish that they would do a sequel. I heard a sequel's in the works. The Interview, I thought it was alright. This Is the End, one of my favorite comedies of recent years. I love movies where like actors play themselves or like versions of themselves, and this movie I thought was a complete blast. I love this movie. It's just so funny to me. Paul, Pineapple Express, Superbad, one of my favorite comedies of all time. 22 Jump Street, I love this movie. I love the self-awareness to it. You know, I really love movies like this that are just very self-aware. This one was almost just as self-aware. Due Date. I actually really, really like this movie. This is pretty much the remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Literally, it's nowhere near as good as that movie. Christmas Vacation, one of my favorite Christmas movies. I actually watched this for the first time over Christmas break this year and really liked it. Oh, here's the rest of my Jim Carrey collection. The Truman Show, incredible movie. Like, they don't make movies like this anymore. Like, this is just a really good original film. Bruce Almighty, I've always really liked this film as well. Jack and Jill, one of the worst movies of all time. Grown Ups, not really good movie, but however, I've always been entertained by it, and it's one of my comedy guilty pleasures. But the second one, I hate, and it's not good at all. National Lampoon's Vacation. Tommy Boy, one of my favorite comedies of all time. A lot of people tell me that I remind them of Chris Farley's character in this movie. I pretty much am just like Chris Farley in this movie when I really think about it. The Pink Panther, I'm really entertained by this movie. I think it's really funny. I really like the slapstick comedy. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, one of the best comedies ever made, by far in my opinion, one of my top 10 comedies ever. A quality film. Mrs. Doubtfire, one of my favorite comedies again, and it sucks that they didn't get to make that crappy sequel because Robin Williams died right before they started making it. The School of Rock, my second favorite comedy of all time. I grew up with this movie. Just so many great lines in this movie that I quote all the time. My family quotes all the time. We got some rocking to do. Hello, you got a bass. You just sit back and enjoy the magic of rock. Ring any bells? Now we're rocking. Okay, that's enough. I apologize. But yeah. By my favorite director who ever lived, Richard Linklater. My family's like really into music. Like every person in my family, this is like their favorite movie, and that's why I like it so much. And that's next up, another Richard Linklater film, and that is Bernie. I think this is a excellent film with Jack Black's best, I don't know, it's either first or second best performance. It's one of my favorite films from Richard Linklater, actually. Next up is Clerks, my favorite comedy of all time. This is one of those movies that you can watch and think, man, you know, anybody can make a movie, you know? Like, Kevin Smith made this for $27,000, and like, with like nothing. Like all he had was some black and white film. And Tusk. A lot of people didn't like Tusk. A lot of people thought it was freaking stupid, didn't make sense or whatever, but I personally found this movie entertaining. I really liked the vibe to where it was like half a disturbing horror and half like straight up comedy like Ted or whatnot. Next, Chronicle. One of my favorite found footage films of all time, one of my top 5. A really, really entertaining movie, very well made film. Project Almanac, a very similar movie to Chronicle. It's not quite as good as Chronicle. Adaptation written by Charlie Kaufman. That dude really knows how to write a movie. Safety Not Guaranteed, an outstanding film. One of the best independent films of the past like 5 years. This film is just so well written, has great characters. Carnage, a hugely underrated film that nobody knows about, and I think people should know about it. There are only 4 people in the whole movie. Kate Winslet's kid hits Jodie Foster's kid at school, and the whole movie is their conversation in the apartment. It's a one-location movie, and it's just so well done. Incredibly well written, great performances. Directed by Roman Polanski. One of those movies where like you just are so glued to the screen, you want to hear like every word that comes out of these characters' mouths. I strongly, strongly recommend Carnage. And Spring Breakers, a lot of people don't like this movie. People think it's a little too weird. I liked it, you know? It's not like great. One of the funniest James Franco performances. Look at all my shit! Midnight in Paris, Moonrise Kingdom, a 2-pack with Groundhog Day and Stripes, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Wayne's World, Party On, excellent. The 40-year-old Alex Leba, the 40-year-old virgin. Scary Movie 3, piece of shit. Scary Movie 2, piece of shit. Second one, it's not a good film by any means, but I just find it very hilarious, especially the dinner scene. And the scene where the dude with the small hand and the guy in the wheelchair are going back and forth. Be careful now. I wouldn't want to go and break something. You look familiar to me. Were you in Stomp? I'm sorry. Shit. Bad Santa. Bad Grandpa. Paul Blart Mall, piece of shit. Night and Day. Semi-Pro. Old School. Talladega Nights. Stranger Than Fiction, Anchorman 2, Anchorman 1, the South Park movie. I need to watch this again. I haven't seen this for years. One of the first Blu-rays I've ever bought. Juno, good movie. The Benchwarmers, a guilty pleasure of mine. I grew up watching this. I'm entertained by this movie. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Hot Tub Time Machine. I will not buy the second one. Couples Retreat, Delivery Man, The Watch, Tower Heist, Major League, Way Way Back, Whip It, Tropic Thunder. I really like this movie. Really funny. Incredible Burt Wonderstone. I thought this was alright. Jim Carrey plays this kind of crazy, stupid person. Just hurts himself and he calls it magic, like he nails a nail into his head. Look at me! Dumbass. Okay, Crazy Stupid Love. Get Smart. I really wish Steve Carell would get smart and stop doing these bullshit movies. Date Night. Pretty cool slipcover. Decent movie. Sideways, written by Alexander Payne and directed by Alexander Payne. Coming to America, a classic movie, classic comedy. Yeah, just a lot of really funny scenes in this movie, especially the barbershop scene where Eddie Murphy wants to get a haircut. He sits in the chair, then he just cuts off his ponytail, and the guy's like, that'll be $8. Overboard, The Blues Brothers, Spaceball, Young Frankenstein, and American Pie. I think that's it for the comedies. Now let's get going with the thrillers. First, I got Enemy, a masterpiece of cinema in my opinion. Very confusing movie. You gotta watch it like more than twice. Great Jake Gyllenhaal performance, and it's by one of my favorite directors working today. Pulp Fiction. I don't have to say much about this. One of the best movies of all time. Jackie Brown. Kill Bill 1 and 2. Fuck. Camera almost just fell there. I was close. Death Proof. The only good part of this movie is like the last 20 minutes. Inglourious Basterds. Signs, one of my favorite thrillers of all time. American Psycho, one of my top 20 favorite films. One of the most quotable films, one of my favorite performances of all time by Christian Bale. And they need to do a remastering of this Blu-ray. Like, this Blu-ray sucks. Fargo, again, one of my top 20 favorite films. Outstandingly well-written movie with great performances, and the Blu-ray looks fantastic. This is, in my opinion, a near-flawless film. Buried, a pretty underrated movie. The whole film takes place in a box, and Ryan Reynolds is stuck in there, and he has a phone and a lighter and a couple other things, and he has to get out, and it is a completely nail-biting thriller. I absolutely love this movie. Incredible ending. One of the best endings ever. Sicario, Grand Piano. Another great underrated thriller about Elijah Wood's character who has to play a perfect concert. He can't miss one note or else John Cusack is going to snipe him from up in the halls. a very tension-filled, nail-biting thriller that just had me on the edge of my seat all the way through. By the same writer as Whiplash and 10 Cloverfield Lane, Damien Chazelle. Fight Club, one of my favorite films ever. My favorite David Fincher movie, Dial M for Murder in 3D. The Guest. This film is very overlooked in my opinion. A great freaking thriller. It's like an action thriller, comedy. And I love how like halfway through it turns into like an action movie. I love everything about this movie. I love the subtle humor. Nightcrawler, Jake Gyllenhaal's probably his best performance. Prisoners, a lot of people look at this as like just your stereotypical Hollywood thriller, but in my opinion, it's much more than that. This is an incredible movie with great performances by Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. So good. I mean, I rate this as an A+. It's my favorite film of 2013. A lot of people say the ending to that movie is ambiguous. I don't think it is. I think it's pretty clear what happened. The Sixth Sense, the #1 thriller of all time, according to the Blu-ray cover. 1 Hour Photo. This is a great movie. People say that this is going to be me in like 15 years. I really want the slipcover to this too. Very well done movie on many different levels. The directing, The Gift, my second favorite film of 2015. Memento, one of the movies that introduced me to cinema. I have the poster right there. This is probably, I thought about this. This might be the best edited film I've ever seen. The chronology to this, how it's backwards and forwards at the same time, then they meet up. It's just so cool to me. The chronology to this film is amazing. One of my favorite movies of all time. I love it. Phone Booth, a pretty underrated thriller, directed by Joel Schumacher, and that guy actually really sucks as a director. In my opinion, he only directed 2 good movies. There's this and Falling Down. That's the only 2 movies I like from that guy. Donnie Darko, another movie that's very confusing. This is a movie that you just have to analyze. S. Darko, the sequel to Donnie Darko. I actually hate this movie with a dying bloody passion, and I think I'm going to trade that in as soon as possible. Gravity, some of the best special effects ever. Unknown, Non-Stop, Fracture, Running Scared, Long Kiss Goodnight, The Butterfly Effect, I like it. Mr. Brooks, Inside Man. Alright, this whole table almost just fell over. I caught it just in time. Okay, let's continue. Wanted, this box set. This isn't really a good movie, but to me it's always been like a guilty pleasure. The Ides of March, The Gray, Escape Plan, Firewall, The Adjustment Bureau, Into the Storm, Contagion, Into the Blue, decent movie, Killing Them Softly, Taking the Pelham 123, A Walk Among the Tombstones, We Own the Night, Man on Fire, Basic Instinct, To Then Ivan. I really like this movie. This is a pretty underrated movie. Kevin Spacey's good in it, so is Jim Sturgis. Twister, classic. Shutter Island, Now You See Me, a guilty pleasure of mine. Limitless, really good movie. I really like this movie. Very well directed by Neil Berger, the same director. Well, he went on to direct Divergent, which wasn't very good, I don't think. The Ghost Rider, Swordfish, Point Break, and Executive Decision. Captain Phillips, good movie. Trespass, an okay home invasion thriller, directed by Joel Shitty Batman movie maker. Lord of War, and Next. Alright guys, I didn't have time to put these back on the shelf, but here are all the movies that I got in the past like 3 months or so. These are the ones that I talked about in my Blu-ray update. First up, The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, Criterion, The Hateful Eight, just an outstanding, incredible film that's really well written, really well acted, and just a blast to watch. Deadpool, I think everyone and their brother and sister picked it up. Well, not sister, because every chick that I know that has seen this movie doesn't like it. I don't really know why. I absolutely love Deadpool. It's so funny, so well written, so self-aware. The Revenant, near flawless film in my opinion, just outstanding. Room, outstanding film, one of my top 10 of last year. Ransom, one of my favorite thrillers of all time, in my opinion, one of the best and most underrated thrillers ever made. If you haven't seen Ransom, I strongly recommend it. Fury, The Road Warrior, The Evil Dead remake, Blazing Saddles, Saving Private Ryan. 28 Days Later with the awesome slipcover. Empire Records, one of Wet Movie 1's favorites. National Treasure 2, Eyes Wide Shut, Kubrick's final film, While We're Young. Blue Valentine, Little Miss Sunshine, Gone in 60 Seconds. Now I'm going to move on to my Criterions. Screw it, I only have a few Criterions. Like I said before, I have A Hard Day's Night on Criterion. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, probably the most mainstream Criterion you can own. Being John Malkovich, this is actually quite possibly my favorite Criterion film. This is written by Charlie Kaufman and directed by Spike Jonze. Like I said earlier, Charlie Kaufman, one of the best screenwriters working today. This film is just so bizarre, and it's just really awesome, about a portal into freaking John Malkovich's brain. It's just a really weird movie, but it's just so good. Dazed and Confused, probably the best high school movie of all time, quite possibly, or one of them. Next, we got Slacker, again by Richard Linklater. I don't love it as much as some people do, but I highly respect this film and the cultural impact it made. Next up is my very small Digibook collection. Dirty Harry, one of the best detective movies ever made. The Usual Suspects, The Matrix, Clash of the Titans, got this for $3.99. Can you believe that? Next, The Terminator. I had to keep this Digibook because the Digibook looks cool, and but I already got the other edition, so I'm going to talk about that later. Seven, directed by David Fincher, one of the best thrillers ever made. True Detective Season 1. Alright guys, let's get into my Steelbook collection. Interstellar, an outstanding film, one of the best science fiction films in recent years in my opinion. Spectre, Best Buy exclusive Steelbook. Avengers Age of Ultron. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I still like Ghost Protocol more, but this one was still pretty awesome. Ted 2, I like the first one more, but this one was still pretty awesome. Okay, next up is my favorite Steelbook in my Steelbook collection, and that is Reservoir Dogs, the Mondo exclusive Steelbook. This Steelbook is amazing. It is so well done. Just look at that artwork, and I'm an enormous fan of this movie. I had to get it. This is another movie that really got me into cinema. American Sniper, The Wolf of Wall Street, an outstanding movie. This is probably the most rewatchable 3-hour movie ever made. Django Unchained, one of my favorite westerns ever made. I love the characters in this film. Christoph Waltz was tremendous, so was Jamie Foxx, and pretty much everyone. And it was so great to see DiCaprio play a villainous character. And this is actually the very first Steelbook I've ever bought. Interesting fun fact. Southpaw. Desperado, a really good movie. This movie has one of my favorite openings to a movie of all time. Raid Redemption, Incredible Hulk, Star Wars The Force Awakens, Creed, probably the best spin-off movie ever made, by far. G.I. Joe Retaliation, when I first saw this movie, I retaliated with, never mind, I was trying to think of a good joke to explain how fucking terrible this movie is, but my mind went blank. But anyway, don't ever watch this goddamn movie. Gran Torino. Love this movie. It's just so, everything about it is so well done. The acting, the performances, the characters. It balanced drama and comedy perfectly. This is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Hulk, the crappy Ang Lee one. Scott Pilgrim. Fast and Furious 6. V for Vendetta. True Grit. Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes 2. Inception. Heat. Gladiator. The Departed. Scarface, probably the most mainstream Steelbook ever. Last Samurai. Okay, that's it for my Steelbooks. Now we're going to get into my Metalpacks. The longest time I called them Steelbooks, people were like, no, you idiot, it's not a Steel. Anyway, Star Trek, the Metalpack, the J.J. Abrams one. I love J.J. Abrams, man. He's cool. One of the coolest nerds ever. The Italian Job, The Godfather, War of the Worlds. Very underrated Tom Cruise film, in my opinion. Really good movie. Transformers Dark of the Moon, The Hunt for Red October, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I can't wait for a War of the Planet of the Apes. You see, Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes were literally remakes of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. A misconception with these films, people are like, oh, it's a prequel, it's before the 1960s version. No, it's not, okay? I'm just gonna get this out of the way right now. These are not in the same universe, not in the same continuity as the original Planet of the Apes series. It doesn't make sense, okay? I'm not gonna explain how it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You can't connect them, and yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. Just to tell you, they have nothing to do with each other. Like, they're both completely different franchises. Okay, that's enough about my Apes bitch rant. Okay, The Wizard of Oz 3D Metalpack. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, one of my top 10 action movies of all time. Love this film. The action scenes are so well done. Great characters. Next, I'm going to be going through my comic book movie section, superhero movies. I'm going to start at the back. The Green Hornet, The Crow. I don't even know what this is doing in here. This should be in the thriller section, but The Crow is a really good movie, and the remake is going to be terrible. Blade 2, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Terrible movie, but for some reason I was always kind of entertained by it. Fantastic Four 1, Sin City 2. The first Sin City, though, I think is amazing. 300: Rise of an Empire. 300. Kick-Ass 2. Kick-Ass. Ghost Rider 2, I hate this movie. Ghost Rider 1, Hellboy 2, Hellboy, Man of Steel, the Superman 1, 2, and Returns, X-Men Days of Future Past, Wolverine, First Class, Wolverine, Last Stand, 2, X-Men. Ant-Man, I love this movie, one of my top 10 superhero films of all time. Just hugely entertaining, so well shot, especially the scenes where he shrinks down. I love Michael Douglas in this. Guardians of the Galaxy, great. Iron Man 3, The Avengers, Captain America the First Avenger. Thor, Iron Man 2, Iron Man, one of my top 10 superhero films ever. I love Iron Man. Amazing Spider-Man 2. But The Amazing Spider-Man, I like the second one way more than this one. Spider-Man 3. Another one of my superhero movie guilty pleasures. I really like this movie. You know, I grew up watching it. It was one of my most anticipated movies ever. Spider-Man 2, one of my top 20 movies. And Spider-Man 1, like, my favorite comic book movie of all time, and my top 20 favorite films. This is the first movie I actually seen at the theater. I grew up with this movie, the same with the second one, really all three of Raimi's films. But now I'm going to talk about my science fiction films. The Alien Anthology. Jurassic Park, haven't seen 2 or 3. The first one is amazing, and I really like Jurassic World. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the 30th anniversary set. I have the poster right there, actually. Armageddon, Book of Eli, Total Recall the remake, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I like this movie more than Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. To me, it's more rewatchable. Prometheus, underrated movie. I think it's a very good film. You know, if you just shut out Alien out of your head, if you just watch it as a standalone film, it's really good. Cloverfield, a great found footage film. Outstanding directing. The Martian, I think I kind of blew this movie out of proportion. It is a great movie, but it's not as good as I said it was. I actually put it down to number 3 on my top 10 list. Predestination, a great Ethan Hawke science fiction mindbender. Under the Skin, a film that I have kind of mixed feelings about. Very well directed, a good performance by Scarlett Johansson. To me, other than that, there's really not that much to it, but it is a good film, though. Ex Machina, Maggie, Lucy, Godzilla, In Time, 12 Monkeys, Independence Day, Logan's Run, The Day After Tomorrow. I really like this movie. Elysium, haven't seen it. Avatar, overrated as hell. The Hunger Games, 3-pack with the 2010, the year we make Contact, the sequel to 2001, Contact and Red Planet. Haven't seen any of them yet. World War Z, Looper, Oblivion, Pacific Rim, Star Trek Into Darkness. Knowing? What the hell do you want?
Oh, what are you doing?
I'm filming a video.
I never get to talk to you anymore.
Oh, yep. You're going to be in the video. Everyone, say hi to Kim.
How's your day, Layla?
That was alright. You know I'm putting all this in the video, right?
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
I didn't see you at school today.
Oh, well, I didn't see you at school today.
Yes, you did.
Oh, I did?
I went home early.
Oh, that's why. Showing my entire Blu-ray collection, actually.
Haven't you done that before?
Yeah, I did. I'm doing it again exactly 1 year later.
Did you get a haircut or something?
I got my haircut for prom.
Oh.
Okay, sorry about that interruption. Fuck it, let's go here with my action movies. Next movie we got up, Commando, fucking badass film. Cowboys and Aliens, it's a piece of shit. Cliffhanger, Force One, Hitman, a piece of shit, but I've always really liked the action scenes in it. Darkman, Face Off, The Transporter, Red, Broken Arrow, Backdraft, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Speed, really good movie. RoboCop, Kingsman: The Secret Service, John Wick, Jack Reacher, Collateral, one of my top 10 favorite films of all time. This is one of the movies that introduced me to action movies when I was younger. Tom Cruise's best performance. Next, The Fugitive, another film that introduced me to action films when I was younger. One of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Incredible score, great story. Taken 3, a pile of shit. Taken 2, a pile of shit, but to me, better than 3. Taken 1, a great action movie, one of my favorites of all time. I love the first Taken. Born Legacy, Born Ultimatum, Born Supremacy, Born Identity, Fast 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Town, this isn't really an action film. Another Ben Affleck box set. Ben Affleck acted and directed. Argo, the Indiana Jones, The Complete Adventures. I've never seen any of these films. The Die Hard collection just comes with the first 4, and that's all any human being needs. The first Die Hard is in my top 10, or no, top 20 favorite films. 2, I think, is okay. It's a decent movie. 3 is actually quite possibly my second or third favorite action sequel of all time. Die Hard 3 I think is underrated, and I think it's a great movie. I love Samuel L. Jackson's character. And Live Free or Die Hard I find severely underrated. I think that's a really, really good action film. The Terminator, my third favorite action film of all time. This film has been released on Blu-ray like 12 times. Terminator 2, my favorite action film ever made. It revolutionized CGI and practical effects at the same time. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, I actually really like this movie. I find it very entertaining. Terminator Salvation, the Best Buy exclusive Terminator Face edition. I like this movie, okay? It's not a great film. Terminator Jenny shit. I hate this movie with a dying, bloody passion. This is what it did. It took the Terminator franchise, raped them, then threw them into a ditch. Rambo First Blood, another one of my favorite action films. First Blood 2, Rambo 3, Rambo, the fourth one, Mad Max, The Scream Factory. I talked about Road Warrior earlier, Beyond Thunderdome, and Fury Road, Casino Royale. Some of the best action scenes I've ever seen in a movie, ever. The opening with the construction scene was incredible. Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Mission Impossible 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's talk about my box sets. The Back to the Future trilogy, the Flux Capacitor 30th anniversary set. This is actually holds the record for the most money I've ever spent on a movie. I just had to get this when I first heard about it. It's just the detail on this thing and the way how it lights up. Back to the Future is my favorite film of all time. My favorite franchise. Such a huge fan of these movies. I've loved them ever since I was a little kid. The first film introduced me to movies when I was really young, like in kindergarten, and I never really watched movies up until then. Next, the Dark Knight Ultimate Trilogy box set. Dark Knight is quite possibly the best comic book film of all time. Actually, it is. Batman Begins is incredible, and The Dark Knight Rises, I think, is really good. But this box set is amazing. One of the best in my whole collection. Just so much detail with this box set, inside of it, how it's like a huge book that opens up. The Planet of the Apes 40th anniversary box set. Over the past year and a half or so, I became a huge fan of this franchise. I didn't think I was going to like them that much, but the first Planet of the Apes, the original from 1968, is my favorite science fiction film ever made of all time. It's so great, so profound in so many ways, has so many things to say about society, race. Really, this whole franchise revolutionized makeup effects. The Hangover Part 2 Collector's Edition. I actually have The Hangover 1 and 3 in here to save room on my shelf. This comes with postcards and an invitation to Stu's wedding and a few other things. It's a decent, nice little box set. The Home Alone paint can box set, another great box set. Last but certainly not least, the I Am Legend box set. My final section in my whole Blu-ray collection. My horror collection. The Babadook Scream Factory. A very clever horror film that used horror in a different way. One of the best slipcovers I own. Insidious by one of my favorite filmmakers, James Wan. Insidious Chapter 2, I think, is a great horror sequel that really tied into the first one really well, and it did what a horror sequel should do, in my opinion. The Conjuring, again, directed by James Wan, and I'm so glad that he came back for the sequel. Sinister, another incredibly well done horror film. Everything with this film is just perfect. The directing, the performances are good, the editing is fantastic, and just a movie that actually scared me. I don't really get scared by movies too often. The Cabin in the Woods, another excellent horror film that really understood the genre and was very funny and self-aware. Or next, The Shining, one of my top 10 favorite horror films. Silence of the Lambs, Carrie, Return of the Living Dead, Ring, The Strangers, Dawn of the Dead, Piranha 3D. One of my biggest guilty pleasure horror movies. It's not a good movie, but it's just so fun to watch, especially if you're with a group of friends. Thing remake, prequel, whatever you want to call it. I thought this one was pretty good. I liked how it tied in with the first one. Prom Night, The Last House on the Left, The Grudge, Crazies, Silent Night, Deadly Night. The Thing, it follows a great horror film that had incredible cinematography, a great 80s retro soundtrack. Josh, what the fuck do you want? Unfriended, a horror film that I thought was pretty underrated. The Visit, I was very, very entertained by this movie. I thought it was very funny. Oculus, The Blair Witch Project, The Collector, Devil, Trick or Treat, Wrong Turn, Hostel Part 2, Jeepers Creepers, Jaws, Misery, one of my favorite movies of all time, has one of my favorite performances of all time by Kathy Bates. Camp Crystal Lake Memories, I actually got this for $3. The Exorcist, the 40th anniversary edition. Now we're going into horror franchises. First one up, Saw. My favorite horror film of all time. It's become kind of a joke with the movie community that I'm just obsessed with Saw. It's just become this huge joke. The Saw films in general, I think, are underrated. If you actually watch all the movies and pay attention to the story, it's actually really cool and interesting if you actually follow it. The first Saw, though, it's not even really a horror film. It's really a mystery suspense thriller, which is what I love about these movies. First Saw contains my favorite ending of all time, just a great twist, and all the other Saw films. My other autographed Blu-ray I have to show you is the Halloween 35th Anniversary Collector's Edition Digibook. Got this one autographed by Michael Myers himself, Tony Moran, and I forgot to mention this, but in case you couldn't tell, I got this autograph from Tobin Bell, Jigsaw himself. It was so great meeting both of these iconic horror icons. And I got the Halloween Scream Factory Complete Collection, all 10 films on Blu-ray. Awesome box set. The Omen Collection, this comes with the Omen Trilogy, then the Omen Remake. Thought the Omen Remake was okay. The first one is a classic horror film, one of my favorites. The Omen 2, I think, is really good and underrated, and the same with the third one. My second favorite horror franchise, Chucky, the Complete Collection. This is one of my favorite things in my whole collection. This artwork is amazing. I'm an enormous Chucky fan. I've been a fan of these movies ever since I was a little kid. The first Child's Play is my second favorite horror film of all time. Just great, classic. The second one is amazing too, and the third one is I love. 2 and 3 are excellent. I really wish that they would get Scream Factory releases. Just a fun franchise of movies. Bride and Seed of Chucky are guilty pleasures. Curse of Chucky, the newest one that came out a few years ago, I thought it was amazing. One of the best third acts I've ever seen in a film. One of my, Curse of Chucky, the last one, it did everything that a horror sequel should do, but they just did it better. The last one contains probably the best after credits scene ever put to film. Just the way that the final film just ties everything together from the whole series, it just all makes sense. It all works. It's epic. It had a great score. Really, all the movies have really good scores. Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, Scream Factory. This is a great release. Psycho 2 Scream Factory. One of the more underrated horror sequels ever. I think this is a great horror sequel that, like I said, it's very underrated. No one ever talks about it. Scream franchise, my third favorite horror franchise. Scream 1's my third favorite horror film. In my top 20 favorite films, I love Scream. It's just such a fun franchise of movies that you can just watch with your friends and laugh. They're so self-aware. They understand horror films and how stupid they could be. They have great characters that are very interesting, and they're just so cleverly well written and just fun to watch. I love all of these films. Here's Scream 4. The Final Destination movies, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In my opinion, the only ones worth watching if you're going to get into this series are 1 and 5. The first one is one of my favorite horror thriller movies of all time. I love the first one. It has such an interesting plot. The fifth one I thought was awesome. I love the characters in this movie as well. I love the comedic vibe that it had. And I love the ending. It has one of the most epic endings to a franchise, hands down, ever. It's so cool. Next, I have the Paranormal Activity franchise. Another franchise just like Saw, to where, in my opinion, if you follow the story throughout all the movies and if you actually pay attention, it's actually really cool and really interesting. Okay, I think that's it. Oh my god. Okay guys, that is it for my complete Blu-ray collection. Thank you so much for checking out this video. And to those of you who watched this whole video, Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. So down below in the comments, tell me what you thought about some of the movies that I talked about, or, tell me whatever you want. I'll see you next time.